Hey there, it's Mackenzie, your host of Winning. We're looking for sponsors for the podcast. If you have a business that you would like to promote to thousands of people, send us an email at podcastwinning@gmail.com or send us a message on social media. I cannot wait to hear from you. Now on to the show.
Winning is your guide to making it in business. Join our award-winning host and entrepreneur, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and special guests in casual conversations that will educate and inspire you on your business journey. Winning will help you learn the hard lessons the easy way with guidance from celebrated entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's fun. It's informative. It's winning.
Hello, welcome to Winning. I'm your host, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and today's guest is Bobbi-Jo Dureault. How are you today?
Being fabulous, thank you.
Awesome. So Bobbi-Jo and I are friends. She is someone I really admire. She's a retired member of Canada's national women's ice hockey team. She's a two-time NCAA Division I national champion, a former RBC Olympian. I don't even like the word former because I feel like if you were an RBC Olympian, you still are. I'm just going to say that. She's a certified strength and conditioning specialist, a registered massage therapist, and a high school teacher. That is a big resume, Bobbi-Jo. We are friends. I know a lot about you, but please tell the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Goodness, I am very long-winded, so I will do my best. You kind of just hit it. Those are probably my highlights of my life. I would say first and foremost, I am a mom and a wife, and I feel that I have so many things going on in my life. So born and raised in Swift Current and Saskatchewan. And I've kind of come and gone, and I've been all over the world and traveled, and I feel like I've had a pretty darn good life. And so it's so amazing to be here. Thank you for having me. I love to talk, and so does Mackenzie, and that's why we're friends, I think, mostly. But I'm looking forward to this and just talking business.
Yeah, we literally said, we're going to have to keep this, on a timeline, because otherwise this episode will be about 3 hours long.
Yes.
Let's start from the beginning of what we talked about, because hockey is a really big part of your life, still is, definitely was a few years back. As I said, former Olympian. I still think you still are an Olympian. But why don't you talk a little bit about kind of your life before now and really that role of hockey in your life and kind of where it took you?
Okay, so I'm like I said, I grew up in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. So there's not a lot happening here. You got to keep yourself busy. I had a very supportive parents. So I have two parents here in town, and I'm the oldest of three. So I have a brother and a sister, and we were all pretty much involved in sport at a young age and any activity that would probably keep us busy. And so I started skating young and playing hockey when I was 7. And this really will date me because I am an old lady. I was one of the first to play hockey in Swift Current. I played with the boys. I grew up playing with the boys. There was really no teams and nowhere for me to play growing up. And so I just kept really busy doing that and loved the game and just loved the opportunity, being able to play sports. I will say a little bit in that, I had a lot of anxiety growing up. I still do. I'm kind of like a anxious person and had a lot of fear of failure. And I think school for me was always a struggle and a challenge. So when people hear that I'm a teacher, they think it's hilarious because they're like, well, you didn't really love school. And I didn't. I struggled. And so I think sport and activity and really anything that I did, it grounded me. It made me feel calm. It made me have fun. But the things that you develop with sport, with being a teammate and, having that accountability and being dedicated to things, I feel like that solidified a lot of good habits in my life. And so, yes, I could talk, but basically I grew up here. I moved away when I was 16 and I played in Notre Dame for the Athenry College of Notre Dame. And I was there for my grade 11 and 12 years. And I was very lucky to receive a scholarship. And so that took me another 30 hours away to Madison, Wisconsin, where I was able to do something that I love to do daily and get my education paid for. And so life was pretty good up to that point. At that same time, I was able to be recognized amongst many in Canada for the under 22 team at the time. Now their programs have changed a little bit, but I played 4 years from 18 to 22 with the women's kind of under 22 national team, and was able to travel all over Europe and Canada and a little bit in the States, obviously, with playing at Wisconsin, and just had some amazing, incredible experiences. And I can say I met amazing people. I was able to play hockey and just enjoy a pretty cool journey through that. And then I did jump and I bounced around with the national team. So you did mention Olympian, and I will correct you. I was close. I was very close to going to the Olympics. I would say, and maybe not even getting there, just being in that. I would say I was considered as one of those potential hopefuls. So an Olympic hopeful is what I would consider myself. And who knows what would have happened in the end. But unfortunately, I endured some pretty big injuries. I had bilateral reconstructive shoulder surgery right prior kind of to 2010 Olympics. And so, wasn't able to even have an opportunity to centralize. And once again, that's who knows what would have happened through that. But a lot of those players, I was very lucky to be able to play with the best of the best with Canada and the US. And so that was pretty awesome. And then, another 4 years went down, and 2014 came along, and I had undergone quite a few knee surgeries. So I've had 4 in total knee reconstructions, and that really sidelined me for good. And yeah, that's my life story. That's basically hockey, my playing career, kind of how that ended for me.
Yeah, I think it's so unfortunate when you hear that injury, right? Because you trained so hard and you work you started playing hockey when you're 7. You work, and when you're 7, I mean, actually, you probably did think you're going to the Olympics then, let's be serious. But
yeah,
when you're probably, but you worked your whole, adolescent life and then early adulthood for that. And it is really sad. But like you said, you still came away with those relationships and the network of people and being in that system. And I think you really hit a lot when you said with sports, you develop that team mentality and being able to work with other people, which I think really helps you down the line with all of your other future endeavors, right?
Yeah, I think so. You make those connections, and a lot of those are lifelong connections, and some of those you won't see or speak to each other. Technology does help with that now, but I'll run in. I just had a former teammate of mine reach out, and they're like, "Oh, I met people that knew your family," and I was like, "Weird. I haven't heard from you in 10 plus years." And so, you just become a family, and the hockey world is very small. And you can maintain those connections, and even though you don't see each other all the time. So it's really nice to have been part of that.
Yeah, that is really cool. And okay, so when you were you got the scholarship, you were in Madison going to school. Did you get your education degree there?
No, I didn't. So, when I was there, I think it's one thing to be a student, but it's another to be like a student athlete. And by that, I should say student definitely comes first. And, during the time that I was there, so it's a little bit different in the States. It's 4 years that you can play. 5 is Canadian. That usually they honor, those 5 years for you, depending on how your journey goes. But for me, it was only 4 years that I played, and I was able to not have to redshirt or anything, despite some injuries. They kind of happened at great times, and I didn't have to miss really any of the season or a bulk of the season. But during that time, I was able to kind of try to figure out what I really, really did want to do. And I am a person who I would say I'm a continual learner, and I love learning. And more than anything, I love, opportunities and experiences that I have. I want to share those with other people. I want to talk to them. I want to grow from that. And so I was able to throw around some different ideas, but I think being a student athlete was challenging because we were gone a lot of the time. We were traveling to play hockey. We were, missing class time. And so there were really limited opportunities, I would say, with specific programs that I might have been interested in. Like, for example, the business school there, it was a very, very difficult school to get into when you are a full-time student and that's it. And so, yes, I take education seriously. I'm a teacher, but then it was very important. And we had to maintain a pretty good GPA to stay on our team. And that was a goal of ours, was to have a really high GPA as a team. And so I ended up coming away with like a BA. I really wanted to do psychology. And I ended up having a sociology degree, and then kind of more like a minor. We could not double major. So I had a sociology degree, not really sure what I was going to do with that. And then I had taken so many psychology classes. And because I played my 4 years, I was done, but my scholarship honored like a 5th year to sort of finish out any education that I might have needed if, something went sideways or I wasn't able to take enough classes to maintain, a certain amount of credits. So during that kind of year 5, I was able to do X's and O's and travel with my former teammates. And I was able to kind of take more classes. And so I just kept taking psychology classes because I loved psychology. But then I kind of took a different route and I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. So then it opened a whole can of worms.
Yeah. Well, it's hard too when you're 22 or 23 years old and you have to just literally decide, oh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. That's such a crazy thing. We put a lot of pressure on our young adults to make huge life decisions. Right. And they're young, right?
Yes.
And we look at your resume. Really, I mean, you're a certified strength and conditioning specialist. You're a registered massage therapist. You're a teacher. And I should tell people here, you're a small business owner because you do actually have a registered massage therapy business as well. So you're a mom, a wife, a teacher, and you have your own small business. And because I know you, and we're going to talk a lot about this, you're aspiring to likely do some more things in the small business world and things you're passionate about. So
absolutely,
holy, you've got a full plate.
I do have a full plate. Yes.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want it any other way, Mackenzie.
No, I get it. You're like me. It's like people are like, what do you do when you're bored? I'm like, bored. I haven't been bored in 15 years because I just move on to the next thing. Or I'm like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. And I know you're very much the same. Yes. But I do want to just ask you, how do you do everything? Because I know we've talked about this before. It's really hard. And it's just you have multiple things going on. So how do you stay organized, make sure that everything's running well? I mean, you're a teacher. You don't go to school at 9 and come home at 3 and that's it for teaching, but you have a business and your kids. So how does that work? A huge thank you to our sponsor, Just For You Day Spa and Wellness. Just For You is Canada's premier day spa with 5 locations in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The award-winning luxury spa features Leah Reese cosmetics and iconic Betty jewelry that you can also purchase online. Visit www.justforyoudayspa.com to book your service or to purchase a gift card.
Oh, I think a whole lot of love and support is how it works. It definitely is not just me. I'm extremely blessed. I've been all over the place. Like I said, I was in Wisconsin for a number of years, 4 years, 5 years almost. And then I went to Ontario for about 3 years and played there a little bit with Brampton Thunder. And that was, they don't even have a team anymore. Obviously, things have changed in the women's world with hockey and whatnot. But, I was there and then I was back to Calgary, and that was where we were until really about 3.5, 4 years ago. And that's when we moved back to Swift Current. And, my plan growing up here, I love Swift Current. It's a great little city. It's a close-knit city. I feel like it's a kind of a small town feel. You seem to know people, you run into people all the time. And, back to your question, I have a ton of support in my life, and nothing would ever have been able to be, done or accomplished without support. And I mean, my parents are here, my siblings are here, my husband's family, his parents, his sister is here. He is here. Obviously, he is a huge, huge supporter of mine amongst everybody else, even extended family pretty much is all here. So, it is a small community, but I have a lot of support. And, my husband he's a guy that he always says, it's hard for you to say no, but for him, it's hard for him to say no to me. he's very supportive. He knows how I'm wired, and thankfully he is very opposite of me, and he really grounds me, and he's very patient, and he understands that I do have goals and I do have dreams, and I'm not done yet. And so it does take some managing, but it does, we have a lot of love and support to help us out along the way. So that is kind of how it all happens. And I always say, fake it till you make it. Some days I'm just like, and, you know, my students probably hear it in my voice and see it in my, how hyper I am. And maybe if my hair is combed a certain way, but yeah, it's just all about managing, and some days are worse than others, but you just get through it. So.
Oh, I mean, before we even started recording, just to let the audience know, Bobbi-Jo texted me and she's like, I'm in the waiting room. I was like, like I was running around trying to do 4 other things before we started recording. And I totally get it, where you do also have like those crazier times, but then there are times that kind of go into a lull, and it's never like there's nothing happening, but you do get those moments to, as I say, like catch your breath, catch up on something or whatever it happens to be. Right.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. You said there a couple of minutes ago that you're not done. And I want to talk a lot. Obviously, winning's about business, and it's about entrepreneurs and how we get through life and how we get to the next place we want to go. And I know that you do have aspirations to do more in the entrepreneurial world. So let's talk about that a little bit. And I know one of the things you asked me, which I'll maybe talk about first, and then I'm going to pass it to you, but initial steps. So you have a business idea, like what do you do first? And I think that's a question that comes out so much, where people are like, I have a really good idea, but like, I have no clue what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to ask. I don't know initial step, right? So I think that's such a great question, because first of all, it's such a normal thing for people to feel. Not many people have an idea. They're like, oh, I have a business idea, and now I'm going to go talk to this person, and then I'm going to call this person. And because most of the time you have an idea and you don't know how to act on it. So I think my best advice for that is kind of what you and I do a lot of, is talking to people that you know that are already in business. And I go to Bobbi-Jo for massage. Like, to me, they're like our little business meeting.
Yeah.
Because you're working because you're giving me massage, yes. But we literally talk about business basically the whole time.
The whole time.
But I think that's a great place to start, is talking to people. So I know a lot of times you'll ask me a question and I'll be like, well, this is what I would do, or this is what I did do if I faced the same sort of thing. I think that's a really great place to start. And also, as cliche as this sounds, but like Googling it, because sometimes people think I have a great idea, and then they Google it and they're like, oh, 125 other people had this same great idea, and I didn't know it, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think, though, you've made really great first steps by like talking to other people that you know that are in business, and really being like, okay, this is maybe a roadmap. Sometimes you don't even know where you want to go. You just know, okay, I've got this first thing. Now, where am I going and how do I get there? Right. And I think that's kind of the best thing. So do you have any other questions, burning questions on that kind of realm there of initial steps to take, or maybe you're past that now? Like, what do I do now?
Well, yeah, like I have some ideas in my head, and I think it really stems from, I feel very lucky and blessed, and I feel so grateful for a lot of the opportunities and experiences that I've had. And so just that alone, I'm like, wow, like I'm sort of like a sponge, and I really try to gather information that's going to not only benefit me, but like, how can I pass this information on? And so, I was very lucky to have a wonderful little journey in hockey. And that isn't everything that I am, but it was a big part of my life. And it sort of was like my identity for a long time. It's like, that's what I did. But I think like, I think about all the skills that I developed, physical skills, like on the ice or with the strength and conditioning or the mental side of the game. And there's so many different like areas that you can really branch off into. And so for me, I always think about like, how can I give back to the community or to women's hockey or to, you know, a team, or like my kids are starting to play, like I'm trying to coach them and I feel like, okay, that's good. I'm checking off that box. But like, you know, like I don't know how to like legitimize a product or a service or an idea. Like, how do you legitimize something? Is it because I feel that I have enough education. I feel like I have enough knowledge, but I'm just like, now what? Like, how do I legitimize this so that it's like a real thing and like I can take this in a direction? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. And that's also something that's so true, because when human beings, when you think about yourself or talk about yourself, we often minimize things, right? Like, well, is this enough? Like, is my education enough? Or have I had enough experiences? And I think that, like you said, you've had all of these years of hockey experience and all of this knowledge and skills to pass on to people. I think just right there, that's legitimate enough. Like, I don't think you need to go and, and education, I'm all for education. Clearly, you're a teacher. You're all for education. I've taken courses I'm just finishing my Harvard course now. Like, I've taken courses to make myself better, really, and to get more skills. But I don't think it's something that you necessarily have to do. If you have that, it's fantastic. It'll always be yours, and you can always say you did it. But you don't need to just keep getting more education and keep adding more titles behind your name to be legitimate. I think a lot of it is to be authentic and to be real. And I know you've done speaking engagements before and lots about the mental health side of sport. And I think that when you tell your story, like just like you did at the beginning here, you tell your story, you talk about injury, right? And maybe that branches out into how that affected you with your mental health. And then you back that up with your experiences and being authentic. And you don't have to say, I'm a doctor in this or a certified this, right? Because people aren't coming to you for that. They're coming to you for you and your authentic, real, true self and sharing these experiences. And I think that's the most important part. When people see you as authentic and open and real, it really does make you legitimate because they trust you because you're being you. And I think that's really one of the most important things.
Yeah. I love that. I often say that to myself, like, you know, when I'm teaching my classes to my students, there's sometimes like, I'll just admit, like I have more of a background in like sociology and psychology, and I'm thankful and grateful that I can teach that in the school. I'm teaching psychology 20, which is social psychology. And I'm teaching psychology 30, which is looking at developmental psychology, really from birth to death. And I'm like, so excited. And like my class is just like, holy, she is just something else. And I get really excited and I tell experiences and I tell things that I've gone through and I'm like, are you guys getting this? And they're, yes. And I'm like, hey, think of some examples. And so I'm obviously like sharing a lot of me and I'm quite vulnerable in the process. But I think in the end, I really feel like that authenticity is what helps me to be, you know, have those connections with kids. And I think like, you know, even when you think about just being yourself and doing that, I also wonder like, what if you have this idea? Like, how do you keep it safe? And like, how do you keep it like from not being exposed? So in those conversations, like you said in the beginning, like talk to people, tell people, kind of get some information, pick their brain a little. But it's like, what if I have this great idea and I mention it to somebody? And then what if they take that idea and they spiral it and make it, you know, like it's not that I want to protect it. I want to share it, but I want to do it in a way that is like, it is who I am and it is what I want. It is how I want to share it. So I wonder about like keeping things like sort of safe or not too exposed, because naturally, yes, you want to talk to people, you want to research, you want to gather your information, you want to have sort of a roadmap to like, this is where I want to, this is where I think I want to get, and here's how I have to do it. And I always say, you know, in that map or in that little, you know, mountain that I always say, like I climb it and I have these goals, but like, yeah, you have your setbacks and you're going to fall down, but like, how do you get back up? And so I always wonder about like, you know, how much information do you give people and where do you stop? Because for me, I probably won't stop. So I'm going to be like knocking on all these doors and I don't want to, I'm not sure where that really ends or if that's too like kind of offside. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I mean, I think when you're talking about ideas, there's a couple of different answers to this. I mean, if you have an idea, okay, first of all, it's all business centered because at some point in time, you want to make money from speaking or a program or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
So if it's something that you can actually physically like trademark, then you could act physically trademark it. So nobody can steal your thing. Now, ideas, you can't trademark an idea. Like, let's say you created a thing. Okay, fine, you can do that. But ideas are really tricky to protect, I'll say. And they can be copycat.
Yes.
There's always going to be copycat people that be like, oh, I can do that. And then they just want to go and do their thing. My advice always on that, and I felt the same way before I opened my store. I'm like, I don't want to tell anyone what brands I'm carrying because they might just carry the same brand and then I don't have that brand or, I'm competing, whatever. But at the end of the day, what I think really I realized was no one's you. So it's not just your idea of, okay, this is what I'm going to do for my business, or this is what I'm going to think about, or this is what I'm going to, whatever it is, right? At the end of the day, especially when it is a business that's really centered around yourself and your experiences, no one can copy that because it's you, right? Yeah. So they might say, oh, I think I want to make a business that's for mental health and sports with kids. Let's say and you're like, well, that's what I wanted to do, but it's never going to be the same. So even if the premise is the same, it's never going to be the same as what you would do because you're two individuals. Your experiences are different. Your ideas are probably really different too. And competition isn't always a bad thing. Competition actually oftentimes will make you better, right? Because you're like, okay, now I have someone that's doing something similar to me. What can I do to stand out? Or what can I do? What can I offer my clients or whoever's going to come to me as the business in order to be different, right? To differentiate myself. And I think that's really where you get to the good part, because when you set yourself apart from everybody else, it doesn't really matter what they're doing. It's really only matters what you're doing. So I can't really tell you, you can lock that idea up in a safe and no one can get it because it can't really happen. But it's definitely setting yourself apart from everybody else. And I think too, just with business, and I'm the same as you, I'm a very trusting, open, honest person. And I've told, oh, I have this idea. Somebody comes to me and they're like, oh, you're doing this now? Like so-and-so told me you're doing this now. And I'm like, oh, no, it was an idea, or I thought about it, whatever. But sometimes I think it's just okay to keep a few things to ourselves until it's actually going to happen, or you're going to proceed with it, because then you won't get that maybe somebody trying to copycat you and you don't even end up doing it, if that makes sense. Or, right. And that's hard because you're we like talking clearly.
Yes.
But sometimes oversharing, if you want to call it that, whatever, can be to your detriment. So, I mean, but I think really it's you. At the end of the day, it's you. It's the value that you bring. I always say, go ahead and copy me because you're never going to beat me. So it's flattery.
Absolutely. I love that. That's great. Yeah. And you kind of mentioned something about, definitely I'm not trying to hold on to this. I don't have that many good ideas, but, I'm not trying to hold on to it. But I always wonder, okay, this could be, reframing it a little differently. So once you have these ideas and you're kind of okay, I'm not really sure what to do or how to take it. And I've collected some resources. So what are some steps to okay, I want to launch this. Do I launch it to everybody at once? That does not seem good. Or do you try, the trusting people hey, Mackenzie, here's my idea. This is what I'm thinking. Here, what do you think? Do you kind of get that feedback? Where do you go from there? Because when I think technology, I'm not the best with technology. I'm glad I figured this out today, but I'm a teacher. Yes, my students would laugh at me Mrs. Dureault, do you need me to come up there? Yes, you do. I'm as good as I need to be. I'll say that. And I could be so much better. But like, where do you go? Like, there's so many platforms. How do you know that you got to obviously have an audience, but like, how do you launch that? What are some steps? You're the pro. Tell me.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Well, my first advice is make a business plan. And a business plan sounds really daunting to people because they're like, oh my God, I'm going to have to figure out marketing and finances and everything. You don't have to figure that out day one. My very first business plan, I think I did in like 4 different tries. Like, I'll say tries, because first one, if I look back at it, was probably really terrible. Now that I've gained all this experience and knowledge. But really it's to sit down and look at your big things. So like, who are going to be my customers? So like, right? Like who am I going to try to sell this to? Or who am I going to try to get to come to my business, whatever it is? Where am I going to be? Right? So you're in Swift Current. Is your business in Swift Current? Is your business online that anyone in the world can buy it? Maybe it's just Canadians that can buy it, or just Americans if you're in the States. It's figuring out, do you have a physical location? Are you mobile? Like, do you travel to the places? Is it online and no one ever sees you, right? So I think figuring out your location, figuring out, obviously finances are something that you have to figure out. And that's something you have to figure out pretty soon in, because you have to know how much things are going to cost you, and you have to know how much money, or at least have an idea how much money is going to come into you, right? So how much you're going to charge. If you're a service, then you're going to do research on what are other people similar to me charging. If you're a product, so if somebody's making like a physical product, or wants, like me with my clothing store, I'm going to sell a physical item, then I have to know, okay, what are my margins? So 2 times is really a basic thing, right? So it costs you $1 to buy it, you sell it for $2, right? Then that $1 is your profit. So really those are the 3 things I'd start with, right? So who are you selling to? Where are you selling? What's your location, I'll call it, and then your finances. And then you really are branching out from there, right? Because are you going to have employees? Are you not going to have employees? Is it just you, right? Who is doing all the fun things that I love doing, like my bookkeeping and all that? Absolutely not. I pay someone to do that because I hate it. And I'm not good. So double negative there. But also, like you said, what platforms? Well, once you know who your audience is, right? So you're gonna have an ideal audience, or a target audience, but within that target audience, you're probably gonna have a few different segments, right? Because let's say that you want to focus on something with kids in sport. So it's kids, but it's also the kids' parents, because that's who's going to bring them and pay for it, right? Let's be serious at the end of the day. So you actually have 2 segments there. So you're going to want to think about those segments, and then where are they, or how am I going to reach them, which gets into your marketing, which is another thing that you have to do. But okay, the parents, let's say the average age of these parents is 30 to 45. Where do they live? Well, they're probably on Facebook. They're probably on Instagram. But the kids that you're targeting are 10 to 15. They're probably on TikTok, right? So when you're looking at marketing things like that and educating, because you need to also educate your potential clients, you're going to look at areas like that. Then you have to look at all of your operational things. So operational things, when am I working? What are my hours? How am I, I talked about bookkeeper. How am I scheduling things? Are people phoning me to schedule? Do I have a booking link on a calendar? Am I emailing them? Do I have a website? How does all that work? And it sounds like a lot. It sounds overwhelming, but I think if you start small chunks, right, and you build up from there. And for most people, it's okay if it takes a while. It's okay. Like, a lot of people are like, I need to make a business plan and I got to have it done next week. That's really unrealistic. Unless you've done a whole bunch of business plans and you're just sitting at a desk doing business plans. It's not really realistic. And like I said, your first try at it's probably not going to be that great. But it's one of those things where as you think about it more, and when I made my very first business plan, I actually made it as my strategy. I was like, this is my business strategy. This is what I'm going to do. So I made it partly to go to a bank and get a loan to get money, but I also made it for myself to say, okay, where am I going and how, like, what's the end result and what is every step that I need to do to get there? And I think my business plan was like 79 pages or so. It was just like huge, like crazy big. But I had, I had employees and I had different brands. Like I had kind of a more complex, but it can be simpler than that too, right? It depends what you're doing.
I love it. 79 pages seems like it would take me quite some time. Good thing for summer's off.
I have to say though, I had made business plans before. I could go to the College of Commerce at that time. It's now Edward School of Business. So I knew what I was doing in that sense, right? And I knew, but for myself, I thought the more information I have in here, the better I'm going to do because the more prepared I am, right? Also, something I didn't even mention was competitors. We kind of talked about competitors earlier, but who else is doing something similar to you? And if it's a lot of people, things are probably going to be a little tough. If it's not that many people, I'm not going to say it's going to be easier, but it's kind of two ways. Maybe it's not such a great idea, or because no one's doing it, or you're very niche and your target's going to be really small. But once you get into that target group of people, you're going to be their person, right? So it kind of depends what your business is and where you're going, but that's where I'd start. So a 5-minute long answer, I would start with a business plan.
No, I love it. And like, where can I just go online to access a business plan? I mean, I have done a business plan before, but just maybe you have some insider information to let me know where the best business plan is to kind of, or like a template, right? Because I have done a business plan, but there's a whole bunch out there. So is there anything that you would suggest, or start with some ideas and then, gather some information, gather the resources that you need, and then, kind of piece it together that way? Or what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people Google, because Google is one of those things where like you can get down the Google rabbit hole that it's like you have 98 different business plans and you can't pick. I think a really smart thing, honestly, if you have an idea and you're not really sure and you're like, okay, I know I need a business plan. I know I now need these things, but I don't actually even know what I'm supposed to put in it. In all reality, I would hire a consultant. I would pay that little bit of money to hire a business consultant to talk to, even if they don't get them to write your whole business plan for you, because you need to be involved in it. But even if you have to pay them for a few time to steer you in the right direction, lots of them will have either free templates or templates that you can purchase. You don't necessarily have to buy it. Free one's probably as good. It just won't likely be as in-depth. But I would definitely say talk to a business consultant if you don't have that experience, because you can end up doing a lot of things that aren't really going to help you, or you spend a lot of time on things that kind of lead to nowhere. And you're better off to pay someone to help you than to go down a rabbit hole that you should have never went down in the beginning. So that would be my best advice. And you have to think of those kinds of things as investments into your business, not just an invoice that I have to pay, right? Because that will actually help you and you'll actually spend probably less time on it because you'll be really focused, laser focused. This is what I need to do and this is what I need to include.
I feel like because I am a fairly busy person, like most people are, I always think like it's all about, sometimes I think I work harder, not always smarter. But I know in chatting with you during our little business meeting, massage treatments and just picking each other's brain and just talking about life and business and all of that, I feel like, there's not enough hours in the day for me to be able to like give more of myself physically, like as far as like, I need to be here and I need to be here. Cause I already feel that I'm kind of juggling, like I said, thank goodness for family and support and husband and all of the other things, because, right now, like my kid's playing soccer and I'm like, thank goodness, I had family to help out. And so, sometimes it is about working, like you said, smarter rather than harder. And, for me, I think I just need to sort of streamline my thoughts first, because I have a lot of them. It seems that I have a lot of different ideas because I get excited. And then, like you said, I'm down the Googleitis, I call it, when you get Googling and you just get like, Googleitis. And so
like 2 hours later and you're like, oh,
yeah. So I do appreciate that because I think it is so important to start small and then obviously build bigger, as opposed to, you have all of this and then what do you do with it? Because that's how I kind of feel with most things. I feel quite overwhelmed. So, talking to you, you've always like had a level head and you're pretty neutral. And I always really appreciate that. So yeah, thanks. I really appreciate all the advice so far.
You're welcome. Getting to your question about how do I there's only enough hours in the day, how do I do this when I'm already stretched so thin? And I think there's a couple of things, is setting aside time. It's like anything, right? If it's really important to you, you'll make the time to do it. That's why we all have those lists of things this is the things I need to do. And that thing gets bumped to next Tuesday and then the Friday after that and then whatever, because you're I don't really want to do it. So I'm just going to push it, kick the can down the road sort of thing. But I think if you said, okay, every week I want to spend 2 hours, pick a small amount of time too. Don't try to say I'm going to spend 10 hours on it because you're probably not. But say, okay, every week I want to take 2 hours and sit down and work on my business plan or work on my ideas or figure out exactly what I want to do, whatever it happens to be. And then I would say, schedule those in your schedule. So if you want to just sit down once for 2 hours, if you want to sit down for 30 minutes 4 times, if you want to sit down twice for 1 hour, whatever, schedule it in your calendar, your family calendar, whatever you use to keep yourself organized. Because if it's in there, you're more likely to do it. And also, if you do it every Tuesday night from 8 to 9, I do it, you're more likely to do it. Because then when somebody's like, hey, you want to do this on Tuesday? You'd be like, actually, sorry, I'm booked because I have a commitment already, right? So it's not sure. Because if it's not in there, you'll just be like, oh yeah, free. And then you just never do it. And then the other thing I think, I said before, if it takes you a long time, that's okay. But I also think it is important to give yourself a timeline where and don't say okay, by May 1st, I want to have my whole business plan done. Because likely if you're thinking, okay, that's in 2 weeks, it's probably not going to happen. But if you say, okay, by May 1st, I want to have my target audience figured out. And then, okay, by May 15th, I want to have my location figured out. Okay, and then by June 20th, because I'm really busy, I have to give myself more time, I want to have my financials worked out. And giving yourself time, but little bite-sized pieces. Instead of saying I want to have everything, this whole big project completed by July 1st, and then it's June 25th, and you're I've worked for 1 hour on it, because that does happen, right? And then kind of are setting yourself up for failure before you have even started, right? So it's like anything else. Just set yourself the time, have a goal, and work towards that. And don't beat yourself up if you don't get to it. Because it's one of those things where sometimes life happens. Sometimes, you take on an extra project at work, or for you're a teacher, and let's say you're like, yeah, I'm going to help with track and field this year, and I wasn't expecting to. And all of a sudden that's 2 nights a week, and right. It's okay. Life happens. Your ideas will still be there. Don't put yourself in so much of a pressure situation, because you don't want to get where you have kind of a negative idea about it, because you want to be excited and you want to have enjoyment doing it, because it's part of the process, right? Of getting that business working in the end. So I think that's really, scheduling small, don't try to eat an elephant, take small bites, right? One bite at a time, you'll get there. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, being a teacher has its moments, and I love teaching. And so we were saying before, when we do this podcast, I don't want people to think you're quitting teaching, because I'm not quitting teaching. I do love teacher. I think I will be a teacher my whole life, because I do love teaching. But, you just think about, gosh, inflation these days, and how am I going to support my kids? They're younger now, but I always think about that. And sometimes I say to myself, am I giving all that I can? I am trying my best, but is there more that I can give and maybe work a little bit smarter and not necessarily always have to be somewhere, but utilize some of the experiences and opportunities that I have had. And, maybe spread the love, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at. And I might come up with a business plan and maybe I share it with you and you're like, no, bad direction. And I'm okay with that. I think that's something that in my life I have had a lot of, you get criticized a little bit and you get that constructive feedback. And that is never a bad thing. I think that's really how we learn and grow. So, it probably won't happen, like you said, the first time where, I nailed it. It's like, probably won't. But I think it's right. It's just about little pieces and carving out that time. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that will help you get there because you do have a life, you do have a job, you do have a family, like everything. And as any entrepreneur, small business person, we're all faced with those same things, right? So let it come as it does, but try to stay on track if that, and you'll get there. You will get there for sure. All of your experiences, you've had so many. Do you have a most important lesson, whether it's from your small business or just life in general, that you're like, everyone needs to know this? I learned it and everyone needs to know it.
Oh gosh, I probably have so many cliche ones, but I think one thing that really I struggled with young was worrying about things that I couldn't control. And I think and I'll call myself a former high-level elite athlete at one point in my life many years ago, when I felt that, a bulk of my day was spent physically training, working out, getting my body prepared, but also mentally struggling with, injury, struggling with, the distractions, struggling with the pressure. There's a ton that, when I was done playing and I had my injuries to sort of be like, okay, my body is just, I'm ready to be done. But, and mentally I was tired because of that. But I would say my best piece of advice was always yes, believe in yourself. And yes, work hard and always be, a person that they have to consider saying if they're going to let me go or if they're going to say no to me, they better have to think hard about it. But that said, there's so many things in your control that you can control, but it's often the distraction of worrying about what's not in our control. And so I would say focus on the things that are in your control. For me, that has really stuck to close to my heart. And I think, we're hard on ourselves. We're creatures of habit, and we're creatures of just negativity. Sometimes we take all that. We won't remember all the amazing things that we've done, but we'll remember those one or two things that just that'll wreck our day if we choose to let it. Right. And so I have to remind myself of it as well, of just controlling everything that you can. And in my life, I'm sort of I'm a wife and I'm a mom and I'm all of these things, a family member, and I have hopefully a good friend, and I'm these things. And then I get to school and I'm like, Kate, career wise, I'm focusing on what is now and being present and where I am right now as a teacher. And, I make mistakes all day long and I laugh about them. And sometimes I kind of pull my hair out about them. And, in the end, I think people see how authentic and how true you are if you really care about something. And if you control as much as you can, it's going to hopefully work out in your favor. So I would say just worrying about what you can control. That would be a good thing that kind of I've held close to me.
I agree. And I only learned that lesson 5 years ago. I think it was COVID. Honestly, I was like, wow, can't control this. Gotta let it go. Just let that weigh on you. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's eating you,
Absolutely.
Right? A lot. So yeah. Is there anything you wish you had known or something that you could tell your younger self?
Oh, these are good questions. You know what? I think, my mom, when I was young, my parents always they believed fully in everything that I did. And I really think that they felt that way about my brother and sister. They tried to support us in whatever it was that we were passionate about. But I think, believing in yourself. So I remember my mom giving me this poem, and a few years back, I was lucky enough to speak at the comp here where I went to school in Swift Current. Didn't graduate here because I was in Notre Dame and I graduated there. But I recited the poem because I memorized it when I was young, and I could still recite it. But it's all about yes, controlling what you can, but if you don't believe in yourself, it doesn't matter if every single person in the room believes in what you can do. You're never going to get to where you need to go if you don't fully commit and believe in yourself. And so for me, that's like so important. And so when I think about all the things that I feel like I get excited about, I think about like, if I really want to do something, and for like people that are like listening, if you want to do something, and you've said it to me, Mackenzie, if you want to do it, you can do it. And so I really think if you believe in yourself and you have, you know, something that you feel passionate about, I think that is going to supersede everything. And in my, you know, journey, there's been times where I doubted myself and I didn't think that I could do it. And there was just that tiny ounce or a second that I felt that way, and bam, like it's like something bad would happen because of that negative thought, you know, that thought process that entered my mind. And so it is about like really feeling strongly about who you are and what you have to offer sometimes.
For sure. And I think too, like you just said, something bad happened. Sometimes if you're in that negative headspace, nothing bad even happens. You just see the bad, or you see it, right?
Yeah. You feel it.
You're just like yes, right? And you're almost looking for it. Where when you're in the positive, well, glass half full, glass half empty, right? When you see the positive of things, there's more positive things. Law of attraction. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And honestly, when things are going well, when things are going well, though, it's so easy to be happy. But then it's like your true character test is when things don't. So sorry, I thought. Well, that's true.
No, you're good. That's the thing. That's the thing with business and entrepreneurship and everything else. There's highs and lows, and listen, we've all gotten through the lows, right? So if you just look at what's good and you keep going, or like you said, that little bit in you, that fire in you, you will get there and you will figure it out. And if you need help along the way, that's okay. We're all human. We don't know. I'm starting a new endeavor. When people listen to this, I'll be a few weeks in. I'm going to be lecturing at the University of Saskatchewan as a sessional lecturer. I'm so excited. I'm also terrified because it's a new experience. And I think that's just human nature, right? I think when the day comes, it's going to be fantastic and I'm going to love it. I guess check in then because, well, I will love it. But, you know, it's scary. It's fear. And we all have that. But at the end of the day, that experience is going to outweigh any of that fear or negativity. So.
Well, you're going to do amazing. I can't wait to hear about it.
Thank you. I know one of my friends is like, can I video in and watch? I'm like, absolutely not. This is for students only. Well, it'll be fun to share my experiences. Yeah, it'll be fun to share my experiences with the next group of people, right? So I'm really looking forward to that. Bobbi-Jo, if people do want to learn more about you or maybe send you a message or something, where is the best place for them to find you?
Oh gosh, I am on, I should know this. I am on Facebook. I'm a little bit old school. I do have Instagram, but like I'm not on these things a lot. So we might have to get into that. I mean, I can't give my phone number. I don't know if you suggest that, but probably email. If anybody wants to drop me an email, I'm pretty savvy on the email. So
or
it's
they
just
can
BJ.
Message the podcast.
Yeah, maybe that.
They can message the podcast and I can get you the message and get it back to them.
Yes.
Because there's always people that reach out with questions.
Yes. And it's not that I don't like social media. Sometimes I have to take a break and sometimes there's too much up here where I'm like, I get it. I just gotta be, it's probably a very big weakness of mine, but reach out to Mackenzie or the podcast and if you have any questions for sure, I am able to answer
also
them.
Tag you so that they can get a hold of you if they want.
And I can send you some of my information after. Well, I can send you probably my information after. I don't know if that's helpful and you can post it. I don't know. Or I can post it.
I'll tag you. I'll tag you. People can find you. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much for being on. You were a great guest. I loved answering your questions. I hope that helped you. And to everybody listening, thank you for tuning in again, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to Winning. Be sure to subscribe to get all of our new episodes. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to Winning. To catch all of the latest from us, you can follow Winning Podcast on Instagram at winning_podcast, Facebook at Winning Podcast, and on Twitter at Winning Pod. Winning was created and is produced by me, Mackenzie Kilshaw. Music created by Summer Furby. Editing by Seth Armstrong. Special thanks to Shauna Foster for voicing our opening. And of course, a huge thank you to this episode's guest. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.